So here we are, we go along in our business, and we get too busy being busy to do what could make us a lot less busy. The shit hits the fan. We don't run out of money, we run out of time. Specifically, we run out of enthusiasm. We get too good at the wrong things. So all the good intentions to create the business were great, but inadvertently we piled ourselves under the rubble of so much stuff. Stuff, stupid things you fire first. So you can almost taste the next level. You can see it. It's in a dream. You can reach for it and you can see the far shore, but you can't get to it because you can't get to anything that's important, or you have no time to think. You have no time to plan. And that's when you've hit the ceiling of complexity. And that's when you're either going to shrink and contract into rugged individualism, which is you being the only one that you can rely on because you're suspicious of other people and scared, or you're going to take work off of you. And so if you look at the path of every business that's been successful, and mind you, the test is 4 years, over 90% fail in those 4 years, and as those 10% go on, 90% of that 10% fail in the next 4 years. So we have a very small chance of long-term success in this business game, but we know that businesses offer unlimited earning power. It is the greatest asset in the world for you to have unlimited earning power. You can change your talent, your use of time, your use of resources to 30 times what you do with $1. You can't get that in a stock, a house. You can't get that anywhere, that return on value. So you truly have a tremendous opportunity, but you got a lot to lose. And this game is hard to win. Rather than have a limiting, complex, and perplexing business, you want an enjoyable, lucrative, and fun business. You want a high-level performance business. And to have a high-level performance business, you have to fire yourself from everything on the org chart except 3 things. So, JD, what are those 3 things? Very simple. The 3 things that you always did, the things that you did growing up that gave you energy, had a very high level of skill, and were highly useful. Oh, but JD, things got really complicated. Exactly. You got de-geniused by life. All the responsibilities, the roles, you piled it on, the new business, the agreements, all the linchpin of new things triggered a buildup of more things to do, more responsibility, which requires delegation if you're going to continue a growth pattern. Because at some point, you're like Sisyphus. You roll the rock up the hill, and then you roll the rock back down because you can't get over the hump. There's only so much you're going to be able to control, and then your ego just gets the best of you. Your fear just gets the best of you. So what do? You start to think about, what am I going to do to multiply? How do I expand? And one of the most popular decisions is to start looking at a role of being operationally irrelevant. Operationally irrelevant. Because I'll predict something. I'll bet I'm right on this. That most of where you get your juice, most of where you get stress-free work, highly enjoyable work that's very valuable for you, very high passion, very high use, you're very, very engaged, you have a very high level state, is selling. Selling means helping. Selling means biz development. Selling means opportunities. Selling means stimulating and opening up new doorways, new markets, new industries, new innovations. Creating relations, creating solutions, removing dangers for your clients, reinforcing strengths for your clients, providing leadership, direction. You sell a transformative conversation. Business is a network of transformative conversations. For example, you'll sit down with someone and ask them some great questions about who they want to become, where they want to go, what's it like in the next 3 to 5 years to them, how are they spending their time. They come out of that conversation, they look at you and say, John, that's the first time I've actually thought in the last 6 months. I've actually thought in the last 6 months. Are you kidding? I remember somebody calling into me once saying, hey, JD, I want to join your coach program. I heard about VIP Coach. I thought it was really important that I call you. I said, Bob, I'm glad that you called. He said, tell me about your program. I'd like to learn about it. I said, great. I'm happy to do that. I'm prepared to do that, but I have a question. He says, shoot. I said, okay. Bob, it's 3 years from today, maybe 5, and you're looking back over this time period. I want to know what has to happen for you to be happy with your progress personally and professionally. I want you to describe, Bob, that future you. And he went on and on and on and on and on. And I got particulars. I asked him about time. I asked him about relationships. I asked him about fun, leisure. I asked him about his charity work. I asked him about what else he would do, how his kids would compliment him, about the time that he spent with them on his ski trips, about how they would learn from him, about how he felt he was successful in his marriage, how present he was. The conversation got very emotional. It went on. And all I kept doing was just asking little probing questions like, well, tell me more about that. All of his mores, his higher, lowers, his less, all those ambiguities. I said, well, give me specifics. Like, what would it look like if it were successful? How much time would you save every week? How much income? How much revenue? Well, what would you sock away on that? I just kept going. I just kind of did a pseudo moment of inquiry, just curiously asking him who he wants to become. 30 minutes. 30 minutes. I looked at my watch. It was 30 minutes. He was still talking. He said, well, Coach, your program sounds pretty good. Where do I start? All he wanted to know is that it was about him. Right? That's the juice. You want to talk to people. You do 2 or 3 things in the realm of selling solutions, selling ideas, selling internally to your team. Selling means helping. And the key to this is that if you're going to get to $10 million and beyond, the only problem you really have, there are other ones that you have to solve, but the one problem that you have to be able to solve to get to $10 million is you have to stay in the domain of selling. That is your domain of self-efficacy, and your commitment should be 70% of your time are activities related to that. And when that goes away, when that dies, because you don't have the support, you don't have the behavior, and you don't have the relationships that you can get to, you die, the business dies, the fun dies, the intrigue dies, the motivation dies, the fascination dies. The whole thing becomes a guilt. It becomes a guilty promise. You just keep saying, I'm so sorry, I can't get to it. I'm so sorry, I can't get to it. I'm so sorry. You end up guilty because you can't make your agreements anymore. And that's where you have to hit the green light and say, I need to hire a chief operating officer. There's a time and place in your career where you're going to need to delegate all of your operational activities. Backstage. Frank Sinatra did not move pianos. Frank Sinatra did not do the lighting booth. He had brilliant people around him that put him on base to do the thing that he was his highest and best possible use doing, which was to entertain. He was selling. He was entertaining. He was using his personal gifts in a way that was useful, in a way that got other people emotional. He would provide them an experience, a show, and that art translated into motivation to come back, to buy records, to buy albums, to engage in concerts and shows, to pay attention to Frank. But imagine if he had gone invisible. Imagine if all that went away and he started doing the lighting, the props, moving the pianos, setting up the stage. He would be exhausted because all the time required to do those things, all of that is what eats him up. Actually, coming out for an hour is what gives him great time to value. That's a multiplier. But you have to have a stage manager. See, you know, in an entertainment business, if you don't have a stage manager, you have to think about all those other things, and then it subtracts from your creative talents and abilities to delight the crowd. Your business is show business. You are not an engineer. You are not an economist. That's not why you're living the dream. You didn't come into this to be better at accounting. You didn't come into this to be better at your operational fitness to execute, but you have a vision, and you need that vision to execute. So what do? Do you find someone who's just like you? Probably not. You find someone who complements you. You find someone who is forgivably different than you, who has strengths in areas that you don't. And you build a performance profile and position description around those things. So if you take all the traits you have, you could pretty much invert them because they're not operational traits. You're great with design. Someone else is better at execution, and they'll have all the energy, traits, ability. They'll have that highest and best possible use to be a brilliant stage manager. So they need to come in because they're the right person. And the right person means they have the right track record, and that means that they have the most significant accomplishments and the career that's been built with the track record. So when you see what they've accomplished and what they've built, you're able to see what they have and what they have done. And those traits will help you illuminate that kind of person. Start grooming now. You can ask for referrals, you could hunt and network, you can describe that perfect find in a persona, narrow the frame of reference, and ask for favorable introductions. It's like asking if you know any good jokes. But be very clear on the manifesto. Be clear on the persona. Be clear on the traits. The clearer you are, the more you'll lower resistance and impediments to getting it. But you got to document it. So that means, are you going to do the work? Are you going to do 2 steps back to go 10 steps forward? Are you going to document this position? Are you going to prepare for this? Are you going to put on some great practices to recruit this person among your circles? Is this someone in your organization now that you could groom or grow? Someone that you could groom up that ultimately wants to be a C, that wants to be a chief officer, and that wants to maybe get so vested, committed, enrolled, have such ownership in how much they love the company that they want to see it great. Who has that ilk where they have that kind of ownership and care and concern? I call it give-a-shitism. Give-a-shitism is what sells a person to the top because they take care of the organization themselves. They're not waiting on you for marching orders. They're not letting you give them answers. They're thinking for the organization. Why? Because they truly choose the vision. They hold it as a consensual engagement. You've confronted someone's freedom in the organization. Maybe you brought them up from the basics to being a manager, project manager, business manager, senior manager. They have an upward pathway. You show that to them and you can groom them and grow them into knowing and understanding the different positions on the operations side that they work on. And then as you grow them, they become more and more loyal. You share some of the wealth with them. You can deliver some equity to them at higher tiers in the position. They come into being the director of operations. Then they become, of course, as you get bigger, the chief operating officer. And then you build a team around them so they can be exquisite and focus on their big 3, the 3 that they only do on the operational excellence side, which is to build processes and systems, policies and procedures to having a consistent, rinse and repeat, relevant, repeatable, revenue-producing model that continues to produce at a high level what your unique process, your unique business offerings do for the audience. Again and again and again and again, it's repeatable, remarkable also. It's worth talking about. So really, the operational excellence in your organization is a marketing tool because when you give wow factor to a client, you create a raving fan. Think about it. Any business that's kept repetitious clients coming back, loyal clients, turning them into raving fans, continues to understand them, develops them, delivers it over and over again the same way every single time. So it's a developmental perception that is clearly reliable and that there's top-of-mind awareness so that when the customer says, I choose an automobile, Ford pops up. I choose a toothpaste, Crest. I choose a mouthwash, Listerine. I choose a hamburger, McDonald's. I choose a search engine, Google. I choose a technology company, Apple. These companies have built the operational relevance to make sure that the person who is choosing them over and over again is inclined to do so because there's credibility that's been built. There are habits in the organization such as doing what you say, finishing what you promise, always being on time, saying please and thank you, apologizing when it's appropriate, being professional and courteous. All those habits that continue to shape the way that we are perceived, the way that we're desired. That's what builds practical trust, and that's what builds emotional trust with our audience. We have to know our audience, continue to meet their needs, listen and meet their needs. So this COO is the right person who has those complementary traits with the background and experience that's prepared them. And we want to set up some goals. What are your business goals? What do you want them to achieve in 90 days, 180, year 1, year 3? What would it look like if it were successful? What is your exit strategy? You should be focused on selling the business. Whether you do or don't, always focus on selling a business, not a job. Okay, the right reasons. So what are the reasons for them to come in? The reasons why they're coming in is you just keep doing more and more of the 40%. What I mean by that is the have-to work is the pseudo work, and the get-to work is the fun work. And if that 40% on the have-to work goes to 50, 60, 70, and you're consuming the get-to work that's fun, useful, exciting, engaging, and valuable, you are in trouble. So we need to keep that work, that have-to work, that pseudo work under 40%, and then the impact work is going to be 60 to 70 or above. Your energy management needs to be high emotional energy and high physical energy, what's called the performance zone, and also the renewal zone. If you have low physical energy, you need to rest and have your free time. What are you doing on your free time? If you're constantly making apologies, looking at screens, never going to your kiddos' dance recitals, not using your second home up in the mountains, your motorhome has been sitting on your driveway, you have busy flu. And because you're so busy, that's the signpost that you need to multiply yourself. You have to fire you from activities on your role description. So immediately you do a time audit. You grade that time audit. You have activities that you're unique at, number 1, excellent at, number 2. You have competent activities, number 3, and you have incompetent activities that inspire dread, number 4. And you're going to determine those 3s and 4s, competent and incompetent. You're going to either delegate, eliminate, or automate those, or you're going to transfigure those in some way, but they need to go to the org chart. And so is your COO going to absorb and intake a lot of those things, or build a team around you, build a team around the organization that can take care of that? By constantly taking off Frank Sinatra all of the detail work that is not in the realm of his personal gift. That territory is this, the outside is not this. There's an alarm that goes off. Frank is not allowed to go beyond the red velvet rope. You can't cross the boundary. You got to be your own bouncer. So the right reasons, the shit's hit the fan, how you're spending your free time, you're looking at screens all the time, you come back from a bunch of free days and you can't stand taking more free days. The minute that you can't stand taking more vacations, that's when you've got to hire someone to help you. So that COO, that role that's going to be your stunt double and your understudy is going to do partially what you do, but for the most part, they're going to take care of the operational excellence. They're going to make sure they're scoring the efficiency and the effectiveness. They've got to get people doing the right things right at the right time by manualizing, documenting, and memorializing all of the systems, processes, and technologies so that we have a repeatable model, a model that we can scale and eventually sell a business, a robust business, mind you, and one that is productive, profitable, it's efficient and effective. And that means that sales are always going to continue to grow as assets are contained. That means that your cost of assets with your people, you can get 1 to 2, let's say, times more out of every person in the organization by hiring well and defining processes, procedures, and policies, protocols that they can do repeatedly. It means that you have a more systems-dependent approach. So the reasons are you're beginning to develop a business plan that is more about getting ready to capitalize or bringing in investors. The third reason, the third thing you've got to look at is timing, is how you bring in the COO. The timing of things. You know, the timing of things is when you're going to hit the ground running, and you need to do this when you're semi-productive and profitable. I mean, you don't want to do this when you're running in deficit because you're going to strain your cash flow. You need to be socking away profit as a first item of expense. So to prepare for this person, you want to have 3 months, 6 months of salary socked away so that you can take some numbers and sales, you can build 2 or 3 more clients, go a little further ahead with that, and then sock away that extra so you're socking away rainy day money or 3 to 6 months of this person's salary. When you have that, the timing window is there, you're ready to go. You want to organically grow it so that you have this person's pay because you're going to be learning them. You're going to be trialing them out. You're going to be seeing if it works with a lab mentality. Never stop learning. And so you want to build on their strengths, and the timing is maybe there's a competitor or someone else in the marketplace that you could poach this person with, and you've been sniffing around this, looking at that person. Maybe they're on the outside looking in, and you can talk to them about your vision. You can time it so that they learn what you really want to do. They're clued in and bought in on what you want to do, and they're ready to go. And you've moonlighted them to come in. You're not reactively hiring because you're dying to have a COO. You've built the conversation, the narratives, the context. They understand what you're trying to do. They get the values. They espouse them. They like your business plan. All systems go. They want to be here. And so the reason they're there is growth and challenge. The reason they're there is they want to be mentored by you. They respect you. They respect your company and what it stands for and how it's looked upon in the marketplace. They want to be part of it. And then there's also the commute and convenience of the work. It just works for them, and they love the job description. And they like the outcomes that you've laid out. It's intrinsically motivating to them. That's the time to bring them in. And so you've got to have the right support as well. Is how are you going to bring them in and support them? They got to have a supporting cast. Otherwise, they're going to be doing all the backstage work that's involved on operations. You're going to sink them, lower their morale, and they're going to get burned out. They need to have high emotional energy, high physical energy. So to operate in their domain of self-efficacy, who are the key positions around them that maybe you bring over, and maybe you do a lift out from the other organization when you poach them, is you lift out the 2 or 3 others that are the pillars they stand on that need to come over. And if you need to capitalize that, maybe you borrow, maybe you go to a banker, maybe you go to a capital partner, maybe you do venture capital and it's a Series A. But you bring over these people that will help build a great cast to go to that takeoff point in your organization when you got your numbers right, you're ready to go financially, you're ready to make a big growth jump, and you know that you got to have the right support systems in place, dialing in those positions, making sure that you've got a good placeholder for your astronaut to make the kind of flight and the distance that you need him or her to go in. So COOs are a very misunderstood position, and there's a lot to it, but you figure it out and you find your way, and you find your way by looking at your own time and your audit, delegating your weaknesses, finding the right timing, the right reasons, the right support system, and finding the right person to do the job.